Welcome to our Substack Live. I'm so excited to have Allison Lau with us today. So today's guest is a published author, PhD scientist, developmental editor, and ghostwriter, which when you think about it, makes her the perfect person to help writers tell their most authentic stories because she's living that process and herself in real time. Allison Lau writes the Substack Monkey Girl, where she serializes her STEMinist rom-com love letters to Wanderlust, chronicles her path to getting agented and published, and writes beautifully honest essays about reclaiming the pieces of yourself that you thought that you had lost. What makes her especially exciting for this community, Allison found her path to Substack and freelancing through Make Writing Your Job. And so, Allison, welcome.
Thank you, Amy. It's so exciting to talk to you today, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course. I think that there's just is so cool because I feel like that your journey as a writer just felt like from what you've told me, it's just been like turbo speed. You
It
just
really
like
feels like it.
Yeah, it just completely just like you really just put your mind to it and then everything came together. So let's just kind of start with like a broad question of kind of filling in people. How did you make writing your job and what was that timeline to going from scientist to writer?
Yeah. So I think I had a moment in it's gonna have been early 2015 at this point, 2025, sorry. Goodness math. Early 2025 when I remember I was just sitting there talking to my partner and I was like, I am done with science. I need something new. I wish people would just pay me money to read books and write books. And he was like, well, then do that. And it like blew my brain wide open, first of all, because I had been on this really strict, traditional academic path. I'm going to be a researcher, I'm going to be a scientist forever. And so to really think about stepping outside of that and going fully entrepreneurial, building my own business and, making writing my whole job was crazy. Couple wonderful coincidences later, I ended up finding this wonderful resource in you and reading your book, Six Figure Freelance Writer, that was already out the time and really just kind of taking every bit of that to heart and going as hard as I could. I gave myself 3 months and said, if I'm not replacing my previous income by then this isn't working. And just went as intensely as I could. And luckily, it's been going pretty well.
That's amazing. And I think that this is something that a lot of people don't realize is real, that you can go and make writing your job and specifically in your case, working on books for a living, which I think is something that a lot of people here in this chat and a lot of people I know in our community are wanting to do. But I would love to kind of understand how you kind of square the circle of all of your different identities. So you are a PhD scientist and a published author and a developmental editor and a ghostwriter. And I've been really enjoying reading your fiction on your Substack. And I think that you've just done such a great job putting yourself out there in so many different pieces. Like, how does your identity feel coherent to you? Doing so many things, like, does it feel like that there's too much at any one time? Like, how do you balance everything in your life right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And at first, it doesn't look like this is all a coherent picture. In reality, it's kind of all the little bits and pieces of myself that have been there in the background for over a decade that I've finally just let all come out into the light. I've always been a writer, written fiction since I was a kid, like many of us have. And that was kind of my, side gig, fun project to keep me sane during grad school. By the time that I got to the end of grad school, needed something to do and realized that was kind of my second career almost in a way that I had really loved. And so all of that writing, critiquing manuscripts, like helping other authors become published themselves, all that was something that I was already doing, whether I was writing myself, whether I was editing. And so it kind of just became the writing that I pushed to the forefront as opposed to the science side of myself.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing that I really like is that you're not kind of like pushing one identity to the side. I love how on your Substack that you're incorporating your experience of working with monkeys and what they've taught you into your life. And I thought that like those personal essays of yours, I just think really stand out because that's such a specific lived experience that you have that very few other people have. And I think that that's just so beautiful and such a great kind of clever way into some of your stories. And so one thing that I am super curious about, and I know a lot of our, people in our Make Writing Your Job community, everybody's trying to figure out like how do you land clients? Like, how do you find them? How do you approach them? How do you pitch yourself? And I know that you've landed quite a few feature jobs from our writing job board too. So if you could share anything about the jobs that you've kind of like in broad strokes, like the jobs that you've landed, maybe if you want to share any rates to share what's possible, or just kind of any information on how you work with clients, what your process has been, because as you said, you jumped in within 3 months and just immediately started becoming a successful freelancer. And so this is the question that is on a lot of people's minds: is like, how do you find clients? How do you land clients and start working with them?
So, amazing question. First of all, the confidence has to come from within before you even get started. You need to know your value and you need to know that you are a good writer. And that's something that unfortunately no one ever is really going to hand you a medal that says you're a good writer. It's something that you just need to cultivate and know on your own before you get started. Um, I made sure ahead of time that I had started to put together a portfolio, and I have been writing for years, but it was a weird combination of science blogs, all sorts of stuff. Put together that portfolio so then I at least had something to show clients. From there, I did a couple different things. I got really involved on Upwork using their kind of token based system to apply for jobs and use that as my practice ground to just pitch constantly. And so I was pitching as many as 10 to 15 proposals a day and just trying to get my face and my name out there. A lot of those went poorly. A lot of those were ugly, awkward conversations of me trying to pitch myself, but that practice gave me a chance to, like, hop on a discovery call, pitch myself to someone, do it terribly, rinse and repeat until it started to feel more normal. And then as I got more confidence there on Upwork and landed some clients through their freelance platform, then I realized I was much more ready for the make writing your job featured jobs. And so those have been an absolute, like, gold mine. So much fun. I've been really fortunate that I've been able to land a couple of those clients, and I can't necessarily talk about exactly which clients I'm working with. However, my expertise really is in the book space. And so when people are looking for a developmental editor or a coach, those tend to be the jobs that are a really good fit for me. What I found is that that proposal, that initial couple paragraphs that you send someone, that is really the key. And so making sure that who you are shines through and how you're going to help them is the thing that hits them across the face, undeniably. And you only have a few paragraphs to really get that across. And so making sure that you've really worked on that proposal, or that like template proposal, I like to call it, is huge. The thing that I have been very surprised by, been doing this for a little bit over a year. I started out my rates at $40 an hour, and I was like, "This feels fine. This feels good." Up to 150 an hour now, and that is feeling like I need to keep raising that, which is great. I've been finding that I have plenty of clients and not enough time. And so that is another indication that my rates should continue to keep going up, which is lovely. Um, as far as like fixed rate projects go, I do tend to do more fixed rate projects. And most of my developmental edits are coming in around anywhere from 1,500 to 3,500 for a developmental edit round based upon the length of a client's manuscript. And so part of that is knowing what the kind of standard rates are out there, but also knowing what value you're bringing to the table. My rates are higher than some other freelancers, and that's fine. A lot of people have run away because of that, but the people that see the value in what you bring to the table will be willing to pay that.
I love that, and I love that confidence of continuing to raise your rates, especially as you have too many clients and not enough time. And I think that there's so much possibility in the book world, especially as more authors are self-publishing, which we've talked about so often previously. On I've talked about with different authors who've joined me here on Substack Live, is that self-publishing is so huge. But in that case, authors who are self-publishing don't have an editor, so they have to find a developmental editor, and so that's why we're seeing such a big demand on the Make Writing Your Job board in our community. And with just kind of everybody that I've been talking to lately, it's just like books are the place to be, which is so amazing because that's part of the thing that a lot of us writers got into this to do is like some version of books. And so I think that it's just so cool to kind of see how quickly you created an entire career for yourself in the book world. And that's something that is very challenging to do. Like, it's hard. There's a lot of opportunity, but it's like you've like kudos to you for understanding and learning how to pitch yourself, building a portfolio, putting yourself out there. Like that stuff is, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of, believing in yourself even before you have the proof of being like, okay, I think I can do this. And then just believing that you can and then going from there. So I think that that's really, really, really awesome. So we have kind of like a question from the chat that was asked ahead of time. And so kind of going off of this question, so Brianna asks kind of more about like how you establish your client base and and how kind of like you are or how do you kind of like approach the different ways that you kind of grow your clients? Like do your clients refer you? Does everybody kind of like I know that you're obviously pitching on the job board. Like I know you have a website. Like how do you kind of go about cultivating your client base? Is it just daily pitches when you have time? Like what does that look like for a working freelancer and somebody who's like in the book world?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. Early on, meaning, early middle of last year when I was doing this, it was all kind of just cold pitching on Upwork, here on the job board, things like that. So far in 2026, all my clients have been referrals, which is amazing. And so if you do good work for your clients, turns out they have a bunch more friends who are also writing books who also need an editor. And so really this like word of mouth has been the way that I've kind of been spreading, which is amazing. Um, when there are opportunities to hop on a podcast or to, guest star on somebody's blog or anything like that, I take the opportunity because it's just community building all around. But I think it also allows my face to continue to get out there and a little bit of like my personality to come through. Because I think that's something that people take for granted how much the personality of your editor matters when you're choosing who you're going to work with. And so having a chance to be candid, be, you know, honest and real and be in front of people just kind of helps reinforce people who are already thinking, maybe this is the person for me.
Yeah, and I think and I like going back to the tip you had given before about, the 3 paragraphs you have to pitch yourself. It's kind of in a lot of when a lot of people are going after traditional jobs, it's like you have your resume that you spend so long like tweaking, but for freelancers, it's less of a resume and more of those 3-paragraph pitches about like who you are and how you're gonna help this specific client, and then your portfolio. And so it is kind of like a different thing to obsess over in a way. And so I also love how you're talking about the personality, making sure your personality is front and forward. And even when I've talked to clients who've hired developmental editors from our job board, they're always talking about like trying to figure out the chemistry fit because that is kind of part of the work that we're doing is we're helping people's, book babies come to fruition and to come to life. And that does take a level of care and understanding what the writer is going for in their story. And so that piece of it, making sure that that kind of, personality and that understanding is coming through it in the pitch. I think you just like hit the nail on the head for that. Um, so I want to ask you about your Substack Monkey Girl. And I would love to kind of get a sense of like what are you building here on Substack? Obviously you have your scripted rom-com or not a serialized not rom-com that you're publishing on Monkey Girl. I would love for you to kind of share with everybody like what you're building here on Substack, what you're putting out in the world so they can get to know you better.
Yeah. So Monkey Girl is really my space for everything that I am publishing in real time. So this is kind of my space to be interacting with people directly, kind of quickly, as things are already in motion. And so part of that is sharing a bit of what I've done in my like past life, my past decade of experience working with monkeys and apes and studying their social behavior. Freaking coolest job in the world, and I've been so lucky to do it. And then now I have the next coolest job in the world, which is working on books. Um, so a lot of Monkey Girl is me kind of storytelling my own experiences, my own life. Of course, that intersects with my identities as a parent, as a partner, as an author, as a scientist. And so it's kind of this catch all for just me, to be totally frank. The brand has turned into me, which works because that's really the most kind of authentic real time space that I have. And then all my editorial work is kind of complementary to that. I'd say some of my clients overlap with my Substack readers, but pretty infrequently, to be honest, which is what it is. And then I also have all of my own stuff. So I have my own fiction that I'm writing and serializing here in Substack, and I'm also pursuing traditional publishing for some of my nonfiction work. So it's kind of this like 3 pillars, I guess, of Substack and freelance and books.
Awesome. And you describe your Substack as reclaiming your story. What did you feel like that you had lost, and what made you decide that this was the place to take it back?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had a moment where I realized that I was a decade into a really toxic environment and had given my whole heart and soul to research academia, which turns out that is a one directional relationship for sure. Um, it was a rude awakening to realize that, something that I had put kind of my whole everything into really wasn't the space for me to be. So, a lot of this is reclaiming parts of my personality that I feel like I lost over the years of kind of giving my all to something that never really gave back to me. Part of it is allowing those parts of myself that I've kind of always kept hidden. The fact that I'm a writer, the fact that I want to help people with books, kind of pulling these things out of the back drawer that I'd said, oh, no one needs to know about that. And just starting to tell those stories because I'm realizing all the words that I've left unsaid for many years, a lot of people relate to.
Yeah, and even Stephanie in the comments says, "I can completely relate to putting 10 years into toxic academia." And I mean, I also personally can relate to you, Allison, of not academia, but toxic elements of Hollywood. So I think that it's so difficult to have to put your dreams on hold to try to go through this system that you think would be really good for you, and then trying to figure out, well, what do I actually want when the more toxic side of things come out. But kind of going back a little bit, Stephanie has a question in the chat. She says, I've been a newsletter editor for 12 years, which has included lots of developmental work. Advice for convincing a book client to take a chance on me. So, Allison, I would love to kind of get a sense of like, how does somebody go about in getting their first book client, whether specifically for developmental edit work? What was the things that you had to build to convince that first developmental edit client to take a chance on you?
First of all, Stephanie, you're ready. You don't need to convince anybody. You are a developmental editor, so own that. That's part of it, is realizing that you already have all the skills, and the only person who awards that title of developmental editor is yourself. So you're there. Um, really, a book is just a longer form of any other written piece. If you have read a book or you've considered writing a book yourself or really written one, amazing. You already have the skills that you need. And so I think it's less about convincing a client and more about convincing yourself that you already know what you're ready to do. Um, what I did on the more logistical side, because I know we want something tangible, I made sure that a lot of my friends' books that I've worked on over the years, I made sure to ask them for permission to include them as, hey, I worked with this published author or this aspiring author, to kind of have some people that I can reference and say, like, look, here's a published work that I worked on. And that starts to give your clients a feel for the kind of work that you've been involved in and like how there might be a good fit between what you're doing and what they want to do.
Awesome. No, that's great. And then Sarah in the chat. Hi, Sarah. It's nice to see you. Sarah says, I was a journalism major and have been writing in marketing roles for 20 years. Have similar questions about how to show that experience translates to a freelance writer. And then also, Sarah asks, how did you find the courage to leave that world behind and start on your own? Talking about kind of academia. So, two-part question here. So, Allison, how can you kind of give advice for Sarah on like transitioning from one career to the next and finding that courage to make the leap?
Yeah. First of all, you're a writer. You've been writing things for 20 years now. That that is more than enough experience to start pitching yourself as a freelancer. Really what you're saying is, hey, I've been doing this in an organized fashion for 20 years, and now I'm reclaiming my agency in that and working with exactly the clients I want to work with in the capacity I want to work with them. And there's a kind of freedom that comes from that. Um, pick some of your best articles, the best things you've ever written, the things where you're like, I love that piece. That's what goes in your portfolio because that's what shows you and how your voice as an editor, as an author, as a writer, like sings. Um, in finding the courage how to do it, a little bit of delusion, a little bit of desperation, a little bit of all of that. For me, I came to a place where I was pretty newly postpartum with my first baby. I was coming to the end of a contract in academia and realizing I didn't want to stay there anymore. And really just kind of came to this point where I had been applying for jobs, like we're all supposed to do, and having a really soul sucking time with it. And realized that's because I didn't want any of those jobs. I wanted to have the flexibility to work from home, to build my own hours, to spend time with my son. And really, it was kind of this combination of like, I know what I want. I know it's there. It's gonna take some work to make it happen, but let's at least try it. And I feel like you owe it to yourself to at least make that leap and see what's gonna happen. The worst thing you can do, and this is what my partner always says, you go get a job.
Yeah, and I love kind of this idea of, like, why not just give it a shot? And I think that that's such a great way to go about it so that because it's so easy to just do the things like what you mentioned, like, "W I should do this next. This should be the next thing," rather than, what does my heart want? What do I want as an artist and a creative?" And I think that it does take courage to make the leap that you made, and it's cool to see you just kind of, like, thriving in everything that you're up to. Going back to what you're doing on Monkey Girl, I just love that you are serializing your full rom-com novel. What made you decide to publish it chapter by chapter publicly?
Yeah. So Love Letter to Wanderlust is a rom-com that I wrote, I wanna say 2022, and it really is it's a love letter to all the parts of academia and the animals that I worked with that I do love. And so part of this was, as I'm leaving academia, to look back on the things about it that I actually do really enjoy and really found myself in. And this book is kind of that perfect intersection of, like, all the love that I have for that career without all of the, toxicity and BS, honestly. And so it felt like the perfect time to revisit that, both for myself as a reminder of, like, there are parts of that decade that I love, and I haven't lost anything by leaving it, but also to have the platform and space to start putting some of my fiction out there without having to wait for a traditional book deal or someone to say, "Ready, set, go," or to go through even the commitment of self-publishing something. This has been a nice way for me to say, "Hey, I'm just gonna start putting chapters out there. If there's interest, I'll keep doing it. If not, this was a fun experiment." And it's been, like, a really fun kind of playground to, I don't know, test run this book, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, and Stephanie in the comments says, "Can't wait to read it." And yeah, everybody should go check it out. It's quite excellent. So you're also kind of documenting your path to, being published, to putting more books out there, to continuing to be an author. What has kind of like what has it been like kind of sharing your personal essays and your journey as a writer in public? What has it been like sharing on Substack? I think a lot of people are a little terrified or a little precious about their work, or it again takes courage to put yourself out there. So I'd be curious to hear kind of like what kind of it's been like sharing, like, letting people into your life a little bit more and your journey as a writer?
Oh, it's such a roller coaster. To be honest, I have days where I'm like, "This is amazing. Everyone's gonna love this. People are gonna relate. Let's do it." And then I go into this hole of, like, wanting to I think of it as, like, sanitizing my story. Like, how do I make this as pleasant of a story as possible, not say anything that can offend anyone? And that's when I realize I'm falling back into my old habit of trying to please everyone, of trying to erase the parts of myself that I know make my writing the most honest and authentic. Um, so it's a constant balancing act, to be totally honest. At this point, I have a little, folder on my desktop that says affirmations to keep writing. And it is every comment that someone has left on a Substack post that said, "Oh my gosh, me too." Or, "Wow, I felt so seen because of this." Or, "Hey, I decided to try to journal just a little bit because of something that you said." And all of those little nuggets probably took 15 seconds for someone to hammer off in the comments, but those are like my treasure trove of reminding myself that just having the guts to say what I feel like I need to say tends to really resonate with people.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. And I think that, again, trying to think about what is the most authentic version of a story, even if it is might be offending people. Like, and that's kind of the part of being a writer, of saying the things that need to be said, and but trying to figure out the right way to package it. And in the comments, Amy says that she loves that the integration of that unique, authentic brand for your Substack. And basically, how did you, Allison, get to Monkey Girl being the brand is you with the different aspects of your identity? Like, how do you square like personal brand and what you're doing and sharing your art? Like, what does that kind of look like for you, being authentic and thinking about brand? Because I know that we all have to think about brand, but like I know it can feel when you're writing and putting your soul out there. Is like, what is a brand? I don't know. What are your thoughts on personal brand and what you built with Monkey Girl?
Yeah. So for me, the name Monkey Girl came from the fact that one of my grandma's neighbors refers to me as that monkey girl because she's met me like twice in my life and only knows that I work with monkeys. And that is weird to anyone who's not in my immediate bubble. And so being known as like that monkey girl started to kind of become this like funny little moniker where I was like, okay, I can own that. Like, yes, I can take that and embrace that. And it's a really easy way for me to say, hey, I work with monkeys, and then people will remember you. And I also found it quite helpful. My partner's in real estate. Realtors don't really talk about monkeys normally. And so I surprised the heck out of a bunch of realtors in Napa, California, who were like, "You do what?" And so to kind of just own that, if you will, that like fun fact and make that my brand has been a really nice way to put a quick label on it. I have to be honest, titles are terrible for me. I hate writing titles. I hate coming up with branding stuff. And really, Monkey Girl kind of stuck one day, and it has kind of continued to be something that I can just park all aspects of my identity under because those animals have been such a huge part of my life for so long. And there's a lot of overlap in the things that I studied. I studied parenting, I studied relationships. And so a lot of the stuff that I talk about, I've also studied in species that are not our own. And so there's this really nice way of being able to kind of braid in my experience in science with what I'm living through in real time.
And I love that metaphor of a braid, of kind of having like this strand of this identity and this strand kind of folding them over each other. I think that's a good way to look at it because it's so hard to be like, this one thing is my brand and my brand image. It's kind of, there's multiple strands, there's multiple pieces of ourselves. And like our brand as writers is our perspective, all the vibes, not just like one flattened thing. And so I like how you're not flattening yourself. You're leaning into the different strands and the different braids. So going back to developmental editing,
Yeah.
what do you feel like is the most common thing that authors don't know about their own manuscripts when they come to you and they want to hire a developmental editor? Is there something surprising that clients kind of discover, or what? Hello, aw, such a cutie. Yeah, would love to kind of hear like what is there anything that when you're having these conversations with authors and who want you to be their developmental editor, is there anything that they find out or they maybe forget to ask or they don't know about developmental editing?
Oh, yeah. Um, with Okay, a couple of different things. With developmental editing, the thing that surprises people when choosing an editor is how much individual fit matters. Because in reality, the developmental aspect of your book is, in my opinion, the most critical. As you get further along and you're moving around punctuation and fiddling with word choice, it's something that a lot of really talented writers can be a part of. And that's fantastic. For the developmental part of it, you're inviting a thought partner into kind of the raw, mushy stage of something that has probably got a lot of your soul in it. Whether this is fiction, whether it's your memoir, whether it's nonfiction that you're writing, there's a big piece of you in there. And so making sure that you partner with someone that you, first of all, feel comfortable talking to, but also can trust that they will take and love and build upon your story and not try to turn it into something else. That chemistry check, that vibe check, that fit is so important. And so that's why I always like to hop on a discovery call and have just a real-time conversation. It's like a first date. You can tell really quickly whether this is worth a second date or whether this is like best of luck to you, on to the next one. That I think is really important. The thing that surprises people most about the developmental edit process is there's always room to go deeper. Whenever someone feels like they've told the story that they want to tell, it's not it. There's always something that the author is holding back. There's something that they're like, yeah, no, I that's gonna offend someone, or that's too risky to put out there, or no one wants to know the messy or the chaotic or the whatever that happened behind the scenes. That's almost always the story. And so finding a way to kind of suss out what the story under the story is and how to bring that to light in a way that's respectful and honors like the truth of that story. That's really the most like exciting and fun part of the process, at least for me.
I love that. And I think that for memoirs, especially talking about kind of people being afraid of, because if you're, especially if somebody's writing their own memoir, then having an editor come in and being like, shine a light and being like, oh, you said this here, but I think you meant that to come across this way. Or, when somebody's so close to their own life story, a good editor is just so key and so essential. Um, And so I think that there's, like, just so many benefits, and then in fiction, it's just trying to figure out, like, what is the boldest version of the story, and there's so many kind of, like, pieces that a developmental editor can add a lot to. So one thing that I'm kind of curious about is, like, what does an actual work day look like for you, or a work week? Like, what I know that you have a lot of different buckets of different things going on. If you had to kind of, like, share an average week or an average day with us, like, what is your routine? What is your schedule like as a professional writer?
Yeah, it's a little wacky, so bear with me. Most of my weekdays look about the same. I'm woken up and anywhere from 6:30 to 8 by a darling 2-year-old whom I love very much. I will never sleep in a day in my life, it's fine. We wake up, and right now I am relying on my local gym actually as my daycare hack, and so they will watch my kid for 2 hours while I work in the lobby, which is amazing. So I go and basically have a 2-hour, power writing session that is my focus time. I'm sitting there as people are lifting weights, just hammering away. After that, come home, put the toddler down for a nap, and however long that lasts, that's my second chunk of work. Afternoon from about 1 or 2 onwards, it's just full-time parenting. After that, it's we go back to the gym, but I actually, I'm the one lifting weights this time, not the one on my laptop in the lobby. And then dinner time, bedtime, and then I work again from, 8 or 9 at night for a couple of hours until it's time for me to crash and go to sleep. And so really I'm getting in on a good day, 6, 7 hours of focused writing time. On a, not so optimal day, I'm getting in about 2 hours of writing just when I have someone playing with my child for me. So, it is an interesting balance, and a lot of my life revolves around childcare and when I can or cannot get in front of my computer, but that has made me incredibly efficient. When I sit down, I'm not scrolling, I'm not getting distracted by email. Most of the time, I'm not perfect at it, but that is the goal, and so, really, it has allowed me to build my work around the fact that I have a tiny human that I wanna spend a lot of time with, and that kind of fluctuates. So, check in a month, and it'll be a totally different schedule. That's it right now.
But I love that. I know we have some people with kids in the chat. I know some of the people here who have kids and are trying to figure out that balance of creativity and wanting to spend time with, especially young kids, and trying to find that balance. And so I think that it is such a challenging thing to try to figure out how to just slip into that flow state and just be in the draft. But I think that you're right. I think that once you have to, like, you only have a set amount of time, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, it's time to go. Time to get into this draft. And I think that sometimes that's better because I find that if I have long stretches of time, I'm just like, it's so easy to procrastinate with that. So sometimes the compressed schedule can help quite a bit. So, what is kind of your dream outcome for your serialized novel, Love Letters to Wanderlust, or your Substack Monkey Girl? Like, what would be kind of some of the things that you're really excited for, your vision for how you want your writing life to unfold with all of these different beautiful tracks and how you help clients as a developmental editor, I know you also work as a memoir ghostwriter. So, what would be kind of like the vision that you're working towards next for you?
Yeah. So the biggest project on the back burner is something that not even on the back burner. The biggest project right now is a nonfiction pop science book that I've been working on a proposal for. It is basically the everything I know about the animal kingdom and animals who form long-term relationships similar to humans. So I'm calling it Fated Mates, what monkeys and cockroaches can teach us about love. Um, I'm obsessed with it. I'm having so much fun with it. And in the next, hopefully, month or so, my agent and I will be trying to sell that to publishers. It's a traditional publishing route. The goal is for that to hopefully go well. We'll see. I've been chronicling a bit of this journey and plan to talk about it a lot more kind of candidly as we actually get into that process because traditional publishing is such an interesting minefield. So, really hoping that that book does well. Whether or not that ends up selling, the goal really is to be getting my books out there. Whether that ends up being traditionally published, self-published, or kind of a combination of both. It's kind of evolving as we're moving through this process. But the idea is I want people to be able to hold the books that I wrote if they so choose, or to download that ebook and just have access to escape into the worlds that I've written about, whether that is crazy wild birds and monkeys or it is, fiction that I've written.
I love that, and I think that that's kind of the dream of being an author is being able to share your words with other people and being able to, share these stories that mean so much to you, that shape you, and I think that that's just such a beautiful gift of being an author is being able to be like, here you go, and hand your book out into the world. Like that's such a special feeling. We're for those of you who are watching, we'll be taking a few questions. I have two more questions left for Allison. I know there's some more questions in the chat that I'll go back to. So if anybody else has questions about freelancing, development, editing, ghostwriting, feel free to drop them in the chat. And then, Allison, what are three authors right now that you are excited by? These could be authors you've read in the past or authors you're reading right now. What are three authors that have kind of shaped you in the book world?
Oh, I love that. Well, my first is gonna be a Substack recommendation, actually, not a book yet, though I hope she's gonna write a book. Gianna Vasconcelos. She writes a really fantastic Substack that has so much interesting wisdom about being a woman, being a mom, kind of understanding your brain, understanding your biology, and I find so much of, like, my background relates to hers, even though we have, like, completely different life experiences. That's been a blast to read all of her posts. Um, Elizabeth Wilson is coming out with a memoir called Lonely Girl this upcoming summer, and it's a memoir that just tracks a really fantastic woman who's in a science field, and her science crumbles around her, her marriage crumbles, and she has to figure out how to kind of reinvent herself. That's a memoir that I absolutely love. I've been fortunate to read a copy of that ahead of time. And then the third is gonna be a completely different genre. Jamie Smith has a romantasy called A Fated Reckoning. It's a standalone fated mates romantasy about, a vampire and a fae. They betrayed each other 200 years ago, and now she's cursed to die unless they work together and get back the pieces of her soul. And this book, I've read it like 5 or 6 times now, and I'm obsessed with it. So, highly recommend. Go check those out. These are all just, like, fantastic authors and fantastic writers that I've been devouring their work.
I love that. Those are great recs. Julie in the chat says, "Can you repeat the memoir you read early? Was that Lonely Girl?"
Yes. Lonely
Okay.
Girl by Elizabeth Wilson.
Awesome. And I wrote down a faded reckoning. That was the romantic say that sounded great. And so going back to some of the questions in the chat, well, first Monvi had said it's more of a comment. Love that you have such an authentic storytelling bit for your brand. That's the best thing, and I agree. I think that you really show up in a very honest, authentic way, and I think it really resonates with people. So Nicole is asking for some freelancing advice. She says that she's pitched to 10 to 15 articles to matching publications, so she's trying to pitch to get things like in different magazines and I think that we can broaden this to freelancing in general. And going off of Nicole's question, Allison, like how many pitches, how many times do you have to put yourself out there before you started getting more reliable work? Because I think that a lot of freelancers are unsure, like what is the volume, especially at the beginning when people are pivoting into freelancing. How many jobs do you apply to? How much volume when you're pitching to articles or pitching anything? Like, how much volume? And I know for everybody it's gonna be a little different, but I'm curious for in your experience, like I know you mentioned you were like sending out like 15 Upwork proposals per day, which is a lot. What do you feel like in the beginning is the volume? What was the volume like of having to just like get your shots on goal to build the career for yourself that you wanted?
Yeah. Um, when I started off on Upwork, I think in the first month I sent out about 100 proposals, and that was a lot because I'm customizing every proposal for every person I apply to. As far and know that my, like, conversion rate or whatever you will, I think I got 3 to 5 jobs out of those, 100 that I pitched to, which is not great, but I think that that practice of seeing a job, assessing the fit, writing the proposal for it, and then seeing the outcome, that allows you to get a lot faster at scanning through job opportunities as they pop up and knowing if you're a good fit or not. So now at this point, I'm really only applying for a couple of Upwork jobs a month. And I'd say I'm getting, 1 or 2 of every 3 that I apply for because I'm really just going, is that exactly what I want to work on? Exactly the kind of client I want to work with? Do I know this is going to be a good fit? And then I just write the strongest proposal I can. As far as pitching goes, oh my gosh, I have sent out dozens of pitches and really have only gotten like Business Insider took me on as a freelance writer. And so they've kind of been my like repeat place where I'm publishing my writing freelance. But you just got to keep doing it and keep trying it and cut as much fluff from your pitch as possible. No, hello, I am so and so who's a writer. No, you just get straight into it. And I think that my pitch to Business Insider that like worked was something about when I met my partner at 21, he had a Costco executive membership and 4 different beverages in the back of his Corolla at any given time. And they were like, "What?" Just, like, let you pour out, and I know that was a pitch that I wrote in, like, 30 seconds, like, at 1 a.m. or something. So just cut through all the BS and just put yourself out there as honestly as you can and see what happens. You'll be pretty surprised.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And I also think for everybody is totally different outcome wise. Like I remember there was one subscriber who sent me an email being like, I haven't pitched in like 10 years and I sent one pitch in and then it was the first one that I got accepted. And I'm like, that's amazing. And so it's always cool to see like some people, either they're kind of getting back in the flow of it or trying to understand the format like you're talking about. Like everything kind of comes back to how well can you write a proposal to a pitch or to a job and how much can you customize it for that person who's reading it, which takes work, but is the effort is worth it. And then also every industry, every editor, everything is going to be so different. But Allison, I just want to say that I just so appreciate you sharing your journey with us. And I think that it is so cool to see how quickly that you've become a self-made writer from, like from scratch in a lot of ways. And so I think that it's so lovely to see you just like blossom and do so with like such great strategy, like the way that you just like learned and tried and to adjust things. And I just think that that's really great. So I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And people in the chat agree. Chelsea says, "Get it, girly! 100 plus custom proposals." I think that is amazing work behind the scenes that people would love to hear, and I think that is so helpful that you're giving the writers in our community kind of an insight into like what it takes to like shoot your shot and to be able to put yourself out there. And Elizabeth says, "Wonderful practical advice. Thank you." And so, Allison, let's wrap up with two things. One, let's start with what advice would you give to somebody watching right now who wants to make writing their job?
Oh, start now. No one's gonna tell you when to start, and no one's gonna sit here and go, "You are a writer." You literally just have to start, and that's the hardest part of it, but once you get the ball rolling, you're good to go. So, all the tools are right there in front of you. You're already here on Make Writing Your Job. Mine the archives because everything you need is already here. Mine Amy's books because everything you need is already here. But just get started. The moment that you get started, it all starts to fall into place, but if you sit there and have that analysis paralysis, you're never gonna get your career off the ground.
Great advice. Great advice. So let's wrap up with where can people find you? How can they engage with you? What do you have out in the world that people can either hire you as a developmental editor or find your Substack? Where can people find you, Allison?
Yeah. Obviously here at Substack, Monkey Girl is my Substack and all of my fiction, my personal essays, and even science stuff. All of it falls under the same bucket, so you'll find everything there. My website is my name, AllisonLau.com, and you can see kind of some of the services that I provide out there. And if you want to email me, hello@AllisonLau.com is the easiest way to email me and get in contact. If you are looking for an editor or you just want to say hi, like I'm always happy just to connect with people and share kind of the wacky and wild aspects of doing this as your job.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. I will include all those links and everything with the replay. And have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. And thanks again, Allison.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thanks everyone for stopping
Awesome.
by.
Bye.